Arrays come with methods, and methods allow us some powerful ways to interact with the items contained within the array. So we're going to be covering some of the more commonly used array methods. So we've got the ones that we can manipulate the array contents, can loop through the array contents, also using map where we're constructing new arrays, concat where we're joining different arrays together. You can also use concat in order to duplicate an array, how we can clear out the contents of the array using length 0, using filter in order to select and return back specific values of the items in the array. And there's also a Boolean where we can clear out the empty values of the array using toString to convert the array into a string, and then join in order to add in a different separator. Instead of the comma, this is going to add in the space dash separator between the items of the array. How we can use the sort, reverse, and using the different arguments within the sort in order to return back positive or negative for ascending and descending arrays, how we can randomize the content of an array, how we can select a random value, selecting a random index value from an item in an array, showing us a random item from the array, how we can add in to an array, how we can slice out to create a brand new array, also checking to see if values are included, turning back a Boolean, and then index of to get back the index depending on what we're looking for within the array. This lesson we're going to be exploring array methods. Now we have already covered some of the commonly used array methods such as adding, so do a quick overview of the existing array methods and then we'll look at some other ones. And the array methods in JavaScript allow us a powerful way to interact with the items and the content that's contained within the array. So if we want to add a value to the end of the array, we can do that by doing a push end. So that will update whatever the current array value is at the time. And now we've got the value of end at the end of the array. We can also add an item to the start of the array. So that can be done using the unshift method and then the value that we want to add into the start of the array. So that adds a value in the start of the array at the first index value. You can also remove those values. So in order to remove the item at the end of the array, you could use the pop method. And this is actually going to return back the value. And in order to remove the item from the start of the array, you can use the shift method. And so that will remove out the item from the start of the array. So these added in, this removes it. So we end up with having the original array back where we've added and removed them. We also saw that we can use the for each method, and this allows us to loop through the contents of the array, so returning back the value. And if we want to simply output and console log the values of the array, we can do that this way with the for each and then the JavaScript function arrow method. There's also mapping, and what mapping does is this allows us to iterate through each one of the items of the array and make some updates to that, so we can create a brand new array from an existing array, and as we loop through the items we can make some updates to them. You do have different arguments that are available, and just like the for each, we can get the item, we can get the index, as well as the main array content, and then you can use those and return back developing and building the second array from the values of the first array. So if we want to build a new array and include the index values of the existing array, we can do that by setting up a temporary variable. And I'm using the backticks, so the template literals, so that's to the left of the ones on the keyboard, and output the value of the index, and then also output the value of the item, and then return back whatever we've got the result for temp. So that constructs a new array using the values of the existing array and including the index values. And this can also be shortened. If you just have the one statement, then you can shorten this and simply do a return. So you can get rid of the request for the temp. And if you are simply returning it, you can actually get rid of the return keyword in the arrow format. So that will just really simplify that statement and produces the same results where we're getting the index value of each one of the items of the array. Join arrays together, so you can create new arrays from existing arrays. So if we want to take the contents of the original array and join the contents of the new array that we've just created to create one larger array, you can do that as well. So this is going to return back a brand new array. So there's our array of both of the array contents joined together. And you can add in the arrays as many times as necessary or needed. So now we've got 2 of all of the values of the first array being added in to the newly constructed array. So that's how you can use the concat in order to create new arrays. You can also add items into an existing array using concat. So if we want to add a couple items into the array, we can use the concat. And within an array structure, you can add in more items into that array. So it's going to add those to the end. And when we output the result for array 3, that's going to provide us that original array with 1 and 2 added into it at the end. So that's how you can use the concat. You can also duplicate array. So when we do have an array, because the arrays are pointing to the memory location, if we set array 4 to equal array, and then we make any changes to the array, so if we add in a new item, that's also going to be reflected in array 4, because these are going to be interchangeable. So now we've got the new item also added into array 4, as well as it's added into the original array, because these are going to be linked, and any changes to one are going to be changing the others because it's linking to the data source. So in order to duplicate an array, you can also just simply duplicate an array by using concat. So this is a simple way where you can get the array and then concat, but don't join any additional content into it. So now if we do have a value that we push in another new item into the original array, and we list out the results for array number 5, we see that this array doesn't have the new item 2 because now they're separated. So what it's done is it's just taken the values and duplicated them into a new array. If you want to clear out the values of an array, you can set the property value of the length to be 0. So that's going to empty the array contents. So now for array number 5, we've got a length of 0, so there's nothing being output into the console because all of the items have been cleared by setting the length to 0. There's also an array filter. So filtering the array content provides us a nice, easy way to interact with the content, and we can create another new array from the existing array, and we can do a filter of the array contents. So select that original array and then filter, and using the value of the items in the array. So return back only value equals string. It's expecting a Boolean value. So if this is true, it only returns back the values that have a string. We can also update this to be number, and this will only return back the numbers within the array. So this allows us a way to filter the results of the contents of the array. The filter also allows us a nice way to remove out any empty items that are within the array. So if we have values, or if we have values of null, then we want to clear out those values from the array. So let's have another array that we're going to create, and creating a filter for this using the original array filter. And what we just want to do is we want to return back just the Boolean values. So these are going to be, if the value is there, it's going to return back just the items that have a actual value. So let's check to see what we get for array number 7. So that's going to remove out the null and any of the empty items. That's a quick way to filter through and remove out any empty items that you might have within the array. There's also various methods where you can convert an array to a string. So it's using the toString method. So let's create a new, we'll call it string 1, and then taking the array and use the toString method is going to convert the array into a string. and we can console log out the result here for string 1. So that simply converts the array into a string format. You can also use the join method. So this is similar to what we just saw with the string, but it allows us to create a specific separator. So create a new value. So these are going to be string values using the array, and then join. And what join does is it allows us to join via the different separators. So if you don't have a separator here, if you don't list something, it's going to work the same way as the toString. So these results are going to be output, they're going to be the same. So string 1 and string 2 are going to be output the same way. We can also add in the separator. So if we want to have a specific separator for those string values, that creates that separator there. And notice that we do still have the empty values. So we can do a combination where we are doing a Boolean and returning the results, and then joining together the returned results. So this type of chaining will clean out any, using the filter, any empty values, resulting in just having the actual values and then joining them together as a string value. There's also a way to sort the contents of the array. So this is actually going to be sorting the contents in place. So let's update, and we're going to sort the array number 7. So it's the last one that we're looking at. So select the array, and then using sort allows us to do a sorting of the array. So the first time we output it, it's going to be the unsorted, and the second time it's going to be the sorted version of the array. So what it's done is it's moved the number up, and then the rest of it is alphabetical. There's also a reverse sort order of the array, so you can do that as well. And this is just also in place where the array will sort in reverse order, and that will be done directly in place. So now we see that the last result in the console is outputting them within a reversed order. And in order to randomly sort an array, you can use the sort method. And the sort method can also take in an argument. So we can return back a value, which is either going to be negative or positive, of a minus b, and add that into the block of code. And you can simplify this afterwards. So what this will do is this is going to change the sort order. It's going to be a little bit easier to see if we have an array that's going to be a number of numeric values within the array. So add those in, and instead I'll sort array number 8. So that sorts it numerically. You can also do the opposite of that, where you have the descending order. So that's going to be b minus a, and it's sorting it in place. So it's providing the opposite. So this is ascending, and that's going to be descending. And because we are able to get these arguments, we can also randomize this value. So if this is going to be negative or positive, that will affect the items and the order that they're being presented in. So that gives us an opportunity to create a randomized result using the sort method, where we've got the value of a and b, and we want to return back either a negative or a positive. So you can use that, and using the return and then math random, and this is going to return back a value from 0 to just before 1. And if we subtract the 0.5, it will have about a 50-50 chance of either returning back negative or positive, so effectively providing us a way to randomize the items of the array. Open this a little bit larger, and we'll clear that. So every time we type it, we get a different random order, and you can use this on the string values as well to randomize the order of the items of the array. So that's always returning back a different order, and this way, if you're selecting the first item, that will be a random value that's being returned back. You can also use the math random in order to select a random item from the array, because we do have a length for those values. So if we want to get an index value, and selecting the math floor and then math random, multiplying it by the array length is going to return back an index value. And that index value can then be used in order to select a random item from the array. So using that, and we can output that into the console. Let's wrap this with a for loop. And we'll do it 10 times. And we should get different results each time this block of code runs. And this is just selecting random values from the items of the array. So there's all of our random items that are being output from the array. So arrays do have quite a bit of methods that are available. There's also ways to get items and slice items from the center of the array. So let's do a console clear. And we'll go over some of the ways that you can get items and get values from the items of the array. So if we wanted to add in items into the array, we'll list out a new array. And these will just be incrementing numbers. It will make some updates to the contents of the array. So console log out array number 9. And that's our currently ordered array. And these are going to be values of 1. If we start it with 0, that will represent the initial index values for the items of the array. So let's add in some new items into this array. And we can use the splice. And the splice method adds new items into the array so we can locate where we want to start. It can require 2 parameters. And the first parameter is where the items should be spliced in. So this is splice to the array. So if we want to insert the splice starting at index number 3, and then the second value is going to be the number of items that should be removed. So if we want to keep the items in place, we can just use 0. And then next is the following parameters are the items that get added in. So I'll just add in values of 9 into the array. So that added in starting at position 3, didn't remove any values, and added the values of 9 in them. So I know they're a little bit hard to read, so let's update these to be X so we can see the items that we've added in. So that will add in those 2 string values of X into that array. We can also remove out items. So starting at position 3, we removed out 2 values, and then we effectively replaced them with X's using the splice. The splice also returns back the values of the spliced items, and you can log those into the console. So if you want to use those within the code, you do have access to them. So the items that were removed out were 3 and 4. So that's there within the splice. We can see those values being represented. You can also use the slice in order to remove out a piece of the array. So let's try slice, where we've got a value from the array 9. We're going to slice, and where we want to do the slice, so the starting position of the slice. So set that to be 2. We'll console log what we have for the results of val2, and then also for the result of the array 9 after it's been sliced. So what slice did is it allowed us to return back the remaining part of the array. So it returns it back as an array. You can see that starting at position number 2, we sliced out the contents of the array, and that's what got returned back. So it doesn't actually affect the original array, but it creates a new array from the sliced content. So we should actually call this array 10, since this is a new array that's being created, and that is going to be created from the items of that original array. There's also ways to check to see if a value is included within the array. So let's do that, and using includes is going to return back a Boolean value. So this is a Boolean value. I'll just call it boo1. And we're checking to see within an array that we want to use, and if it includes, and we'll check to see if that includes the value of 3. And we'll console log out what we have for the result of boo. And we get returned back that this is false. that this array no longer has the value of 3 because we replaced it with x. So let's select the value of string x. So now we get a return back of true. So that's telling us that that particular value is included. We can also get the index value of the items of the array. So selecting the array that we want to use, we'll just use array number 9. And then the index of allows us to check and return back the index value if the item is found within the array. If it's not found, then we're going to get returned back a -1. So it's not going to have an index value. So this is going to return back the first matching result. So when we look into the console, the first matching result of the array is at index number 3, and that's why we did get the value of 3 being returned back. So if we are looking for a value that doesn't exist, such as we know that the value of 3 doesn't exist, we get a result of -1. So that means that that particular value was not found. There's also a way to get the last index. So this is the index, and then using the last index of, and we do have 2 occurrences of x, so this time it should return back the last index, which is going to be the one that's next to it, so the index value of 4. You can also do a find index and find index value, and this is expecting a function. You can also do it as a callback. So setting up the item, and here we're going to check to see if the value of the item, so this is a more powerful way to get and check to see if the index is there. So checking to see if item is equal to x, and then we return back item if it's there. So we get index value of the item once it's found, and it returns back the item, which is going to be the index value of that particular item. So that's where we also get 3, as this is going to return back the first matching result within the array. Go ahead and try out some of the array methods in order to get more familiar with updating the contents of an array using the array method, and you can be ready to move on to the next lesson.